Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Monroe Township Zoning Board of Adjustment for March 28, 2023. Please join me in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, it is hereby announced and shall be entered into the minutes of this meeting that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the following: posted on the bulletin board of the Office of the Township Clerk, posted on the bulletin boards within the municipal complex, printed in the Home News Tribune on December 30th, 2022, posted on the Monroe Township website, and sent to those individuals who have requested personal notice. Secretary, roll call, please.
Ms. Damiani?
Here.
Mr. Lupo?
Here.
Mr. Masters?
Here.
Mr. Busman? Ms. Caratori? Mr. Tanzi? Mr. Jaffe?
Here.
Mr. Verdi? Mr. Cole?
Here.
Dr. Kenzie?
Here.
Chairman LaFada?
Absent. Board members, you have the minutes of the regular meeting that was held on January 31st, 2023. Any comments, corrections? If so, then a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have to have roll call.
You can do them all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any noes?
That's her
Okay. Okay. Right now, I'm going to hand it over to our attorney for application number 1.
Sure. Yep. Okay. First application is BA 521622 Concordia MZL LLC. It's my understanding that the applicant's requested or has indicated that they're not going to proceed, and it would be appropriate for the board to dismiss this application without prejudice so that it could be refiled or reinstated at a later time. So there would just need to be a motion to dismiss without prejudice.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Mr. Lupo?
Yes.
Mr. Masters? Mr. Jaffe?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Dr. Kenzie?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Damiani?
Yes.
Madam Chair, if I could just ask a question to our attorney.
Yes, Mr.
Does that mean the applicant were to come back, they would have to do a whole new application?
They could request the application be reinstated or come back with a new application, but something would need to happen on the applicant's part to either reinstate or refile the application.
And in either event, before coming back to the board, they would have to notice?
At this point, before they were going to come back to the board for anything, they were going to need to renotice. So when they were here last and introduced their application, I believe we carried it, and subsequent to that, there was a notice requirement. So anytime they were going to come back before the board, they would have needed to renotice. That'll be a continuation if any additional hearing on this were to proceed again.
Thanks.
You got it.
And also.
Sure. So the second application on the agenda is BA 5222-22, Ravi Shankar Covey, property at 43 Keswick Circle. That application is not ready to proceed this evening, and the applicant has requested that it be carried to the April 25th, 2023 meeting, and the applicant will need to renotice for that hearing.
Thank you.
You got it.
All right, so our first application to be heard tonight is BA-5231-22, 283 Applegarth Realty LLC. Request for final site plan.
That application
Mr.
is
Toth?
ready, Madam Chair. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, members of the board professionals. Walter Toto on behalf of the applicant, 283 Applegarth Realty, LLC. The board approved a use variance and preliminary major site plan approval in December, and that resolution was memorialized in January. We're back here tonight for final approval. And in the intervening time period, we've revised the plans in accordance with both the board's suggestions from the last meeting and the board's professional suggestions. We do have 2 remaining variances which have been somewhat tweaked in the intervening period. We had first requested relief for parking space sizes of 9 by 18. Tonight we're proposing 9.5 by 18. The ordinance requires 10 by 20. And also the impervious coverage went up just a tick from 36.9% to 37%. And I'm getting ahead of myself, Madam Chair and Mr. Vignolo. The board does have jurisdiction by virtue of legal notices that were posted in February, and I believe the township, at the time of the cancellation of the hearing, posted the appropriate notices.
That is correct, Mr. Toto. The board does have jurisdiction to hear the application.
Great. I have two witnesses tonight, Doug Hanley, the project engineer, and Mark Remza, our project planner. I have the reports from Mr. Razumowitz from February 27th, 2023, and from Ms. Apte's office, February 9th, 2023, and we're prepared to address all of those comments and, quite frankly, comply with those comments as well. So, Madam Chair, without further ado, I'll call Doug Hanley to testify. What's the best spot for this?
That's good right there.
For Mr. Lupo, that's the best spot right there.
That's right. That there, I'm tired of looking 50 yards away.
That's not. Okay. Yeah. Mr. Vignola will mark that A1.
We certainly can.
Was he
With the
sworn
date
in
as
yet?
We're going to swear him in.
Oh, yes.
Nope. That's love to swear at people. Perfect. If you could raise your right hand, do you swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address for the record, please.
Sure. Douglas Hanley, Hanley, 1904 Main Street, Lake Como, New Jersey, COMO.
Great, thank you.
At the last hearing, Mr. Hanley was recognized as an expert in civil engineering.
Yes, we'll accept his.
Sure, Mr. Hanley, since last you appeared and qualified as an expert in the area of civil engineering, have your credentials been detrimentally affected at all?
They've not.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you very much, board. Just want to. So, good evening, everybody. So, just to get the board refreshed on the application that we're discussing, I'll try to stay low and out of the way here. We're here tonight seeking final major site plan approval. And first, let's get the exhibit marked. This is titled Aerial Map Exhibit. I'll mark it A1. It is dated February 28th, 2023, and it's prepared by Dynamic Engineering. It's essentially the aerial map that is part of the site plan package with a couple additional colors for the board's reference. The subject property is shown in the center of the sheet in yellow, and then the various zone lines are shown in a cyan color throughout the exhibit. So we're here tonight discussing Block 26, Lot 20.02, which is 283 Applegarth Road, which is County Route 619. The only thing I really want to point out on the existing conditions in the aerial map exhibit is the subject properties in the R30 zone, as well the properties immediately to the north and south, which would be on the top and the bottom of this exhibit, are in the R30, to the rear of the property of the planned retirement community, and then across the street you have the planned office commercial district. With that said, I'll jump right into the site plan rendering, which we can mark as A2. And this is site plan rendering prepared by Dynamic Engineering, dated February 28th, 2023.
Bless you.
Most of the testimony was provided at the November hearing where preliminary site plan and use variance approval were granted. But to summarize quickly, we're proposing a two-story medical office building, 4,000 square foot footprint for 8,000 square feet total. Just to run the board through the changes since that hearing, if you recall, during the November hearing, we were proposing 9-foot by 18-foot parking spaces, which deviates from the 10-foot by 20-foot requirement of the ordinance. So after that hearing, we met with Mr. Razumowitz to discuss the proposed parking dimensions and came up with a compromise to propose 9.5-foot wide parking spaces. So 9.5 foot wide by 18 feet deep, which still requires variance relief. However, we feel comfortable with those dimensions that it will safely and adequately handle the proposed use. We were previously proposing 35 parking spaces with the 9-foot by 18-foot dimensions. With the increased width of the parking spaces, now we're proposing 33, which is compliant with the ordinance, as 32 are required. The last change as a result of the parking layout revision was as Mr. Toto mentioned, the impervious coverage from the previous hearing was 36.9%. Now it's slightly increased to 37.0%. So a slight increase on that variance, which I think is really minimal since the last hearing. There were a few other annotative changes to the plan. First, we are proposing a generator to the east, which is directly to the rear of the proposed medical office building, as requested by the board in November. We are providing employee parking striping on 8 of the parking spaces that are being proposed. And we relocated the EV parking spaces to the southern portion of the parking lot, which has immediate access to the sidewalk. That summarizes the changes to the site plan that we resubmitted. And there's just 2 other things I want to touch on from the review letters. First, I think there was a comment to provide testimony on the trash enclosure. So we're providing a 10-foot by 10-foot masonry trash enclosure with a solid gate towards the rear of the parking lot. And at this time, it's anticipated that a single metal dumpster would be enclosed within that trash enclosure. And then lastly, since we provided our testimony at the last hearing, we have heard back from the county on our site plan application, and they are requesting sidewalk along our frontage. I know there was some question to if the township fund would be contributed to or sidewalk. So the county is requesting sidewalk at this time.
So I have one last comment.
Yep.
With regard to the solar panels or the proposal for solar panels. It's my understanding the applicant will construct the roof in such a manner as to allow for solar panels, but there's no intention to install them at this stage, correct?
Correct, and I believe that was the testimony provided in November as well.
Okay. Nothing further, Madam Chair.
Board, Mr. Razumowitz, any questions?
No, Madam Chair, they agreed to my February 27th review letter. They did adjust the parking stalls to 9.5 feet. I think that's a good compromise. Instead of losing spots, the applicant feels that they need some additional spots. So the 9.5 feet I'm comfortable with. Impervious coverage tweaked 1/10%, so I don't have any issue with that. I believe they did eliminate a parking in a front yard variance. So they eliminated that variance. They did add the generator, like they said, and they are providing a curb and sidewalk. So I have no additional comments.
Thank you. Mika?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think they've addressed most of the comment. Mr. Henley, could you just clarify, you'll work with us on the lighting plan to remove
Yes.
any kind of door corners, as well as the wall signs shall be, no details have been provided, but they'll be complying with whenever you need zoning permits.
Correct. So we did revise the lighting to address your comments. I believe there's still one outstanding comment with the dark corner, so we'll get that squared away in resolution compliance should we receive a favorable vote. And for the wall signage, we are proposing 2 15-square-foot wall-mounted signs. The details have not been designed yet. However, we will submit those for zoning permit review at the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
That's it. Thank you. Board members, any comments, questions?
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
The generator, natural gas driven for fuel, or is it diesel?
That hasn't been determined yet. I would imagine it would be natural gas if that's available, but the exact generator has not been selected. We just are constructing a pad that one will be installed on, and that will go through the building permit review at that time.
Any plans for mitigating the noise if needed?
There's no specific noise attenuation proposed immediately around the generator pad that's being proposed. What I can say is that it is located essentially as far from the residential property to the north as we could locate it. And as we mentioned at the last hearing, the property to the south, although in the R30 zone, has recently been approved for a similar medical office use. So that's why we situated the building and now the generator towards this side of the site. So it's not intended that the generator will be used frequently. So with that said, I think we're comfortable with the location that's selected.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. That's it with this witness?
Yep. Thank you very much. So Remza, if you would.
Good evening. Do you swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address for the record, please.
Name is Mark A. Remsa, R-E-M-S-A. Address is 10 Dewberry Court, Mount Laurel, New Jersey.
Thanks, sir.
Madam Chair, the last hearing, Mr. Ramsey was.
I was waiting for
accepted as an
Mr.
expert
Remsa, have your
planning.
credentials been detrimentally affected since last you appeared and qualified as an expert in the area of professional planning before this board?
They have not.
Perfect.
Mark, provide for the board the planning aspects of the two variances that we're discussing.
Yes, so the two variances are, first one, section 108-6.4. That's the maximum impervious coverage that's permitted, 35% in the residential zone, and we're proposing 37%. The other one is from section 108-9.1B, 1 in parentheses. That's where the minimum parking space size is required to be 10 foot by 20 foot, and the applicant has revised it to 9.5 by 18 feet. And so it's important to know that the type of use that you approved is really something that's typically approved in the OP, Office Professional Zone, or NC Zone, where it typically happens. Those zones allow 60% of impervious cover, and because the application is trying to keep as best as possible within the bulk variances and requirements for the residential zone, we're only over by 2%, but yet accommodating a medical facility. So we're supposed to have these are considered a C2 variance. So these are the types that have to have better zoning as a result of the proposal. And in terms of the impervious cover, it's a balancing. It's a balancing of accommodating the medical building and the adequate parking as balancing for keeping stormwater runoff minimized, and also keeping in character with the surrounding area. And I believe the slightly over the 35% impervious cover does those things. It ends up in better zoning. In terms of the parking space size, we heard that a number of parking spaces exceeds the required 32. We're proposing 33, and I have to agree with the applicant's engineer as well as the board's engineer that the 9.5 9.5 foot wide width will accommodate the patrons of the medical facility sufficiently. And the industry standards are actually going down to 9 by 18, and we're almost there at the 10 foot that you require in your ordinance. So we also have to show that we promote the purposes of the municipal land use law. And I'm going to cover those that are part of NJSA 40:55-2 to provide adequate light, air, and open space. So I said it's the slightly over the 2% of the 35% maximum impervious cover is that balancing and still provides that sufficient open space and buffering around the proposed building and the parking lot. Obviously, G, to provide sufficient space for appropriate locations for a number of uses. In this case, it's a commercial office type use for the medical facility. Another one is promote a desirable visual environment. That's I, and we do that because, in fact, we're replacing an outdated medical building, and we're putting in a new modern building, and we're trying to maintain as much open space and green around it while accommodating the parking size and the impervious cover. J, and that's to prevent urban sprawl and degradation of the environment through improper use of land. In this case, again, it's the balancing of the maximum impervious cover, trying to minimize stormwater runoff, at the same time reusing an existing building that already has the utilities that serve it. And then we come back to A, and that's to encourage the municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in this state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. So I say that all those previous purposes that are being promoted can be summed up in A. So is this site particularly suited for these two variances? I believe they are. Again, the site is a medical facility today. It's being changed to a more modern one. And I believe these two variances will actually add to the better zoning, which I described earlier. The negative criteria, to the north, there's a residence, and we're maintaining the buffering to not impact the residents to the north. To the east is there's a pond in open space that's part of the retirement community to the east. I don't see any negative impact that these two variances would have on that. And to the south is another medical facility that was approved on the property to the south, and these two variances will not have any negative impact on that. And to the west, you have a dwelling with a home-based accounting business in it. Again, these two variances won't have any negative impact on that either. And then finally, we have to reconcile with the master plan. And the 2022 master plan talks about some land use element goals and objectives, which this application will accomplish. And that's to encourage appropriate commercial development in areas of population concentration and where the infrastructure can accommodate. And I just talked about the fact that that's one of the efficient use of land purposes of the municipal land use law. Encourage development and redevelopment and infill where it's feasible. And again, this is redeveloping a property with an old, outdated medical facility. And these two variances will help accommodate that redevelopment. And finally, to ensure Monroe has in place sufficient strategies to minimize natural hazards and climate change vulnerability. A lot of that has to do with stormwater management, and again, the balancing of the impervious cover, trying to minimize that. I think the proposal accomplishes that. So on balance, I believe these two variances can be granted.
Mark, just to correct the record, I said something in error earlier regarding the parking space size. What's required is 10 by 18, not 10 by 20, 10 by 18.
Yeah.
And we're proposing 9.5 by 18.
Correct. Yes.
Nothing further, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mark, any comments?
I have no other comments.
Mika? No? Board members? Okay. Is that your?
That's it, Madam Chair.
Okay. At this point, I'd like to open it up to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to be heard on this application, come forward. Seeing none, I look for a motion to close.
Motion to close.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Board members?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second? All in favor, oh, I'm sorry, roll call.
Mr. Lupo?
Yes.
Mr. Masters? Yes. Mr. Jaffe?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Dr. Kinsey?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Damiani?
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Stay well.
Let's wait a month for the resolution.
You have to wait a month for the resolution.
He knows. Two seconds. Okay, our next application, BA-5187-20, Monroe Solar Farm LLC, request for amended use variance with preliminary and final site plan and minor subdivision. Mr. Pape, good evening. We also need a copy of the things.
Sure. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, board professionals, and public. My name is Kenneth Pape. I'm with the firm of Heilbrunn Pape and have the responsibility this evening of representing your applicant, Monroe Solar, and William J. Warren III. This application was scheduled to be heard in February and was noticed for February and was carried to this evening through procedures established by the board. May I ask that the record reflect the jurisdiction has been taken by the board?
Absolutely, Mr. Pape. This will confirm that I reviewed the notices, the affidavits of mailing and publication in advance of last meeting, and they were in order. The board does have jurisdiction to hear the application.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is an application that has been before the board for a couple of years. It originally was filed as an application seeking amended site plan approval, amended use variance relief, and a subdivision. The relief has been modified substantially. The original proposal identified improvements to be constructed on the 25-acre parcel that we're asking to be subdivided from the mother lot. There are no improvements proposed. The request is simply a subdivision to cut a 75-acre parcel into two properties, one just under 50 acres and the other approximately 25 acres. By way of a little background, the larger parcel, the 49-acre parcel, came before this board in 2013 as an application seeking use variance relief to build a solar farm. And that approval was ultimately granted. And the remaining portion was not designed for any activity or use other than a stone parking field that would be used for the staging of vehicles building the solar facility. That parking area was used for other vehicles, which all of which has ceased. The property is currently vacant land. An interesting thing has occurred since we came before the board, and I'd be remiss if I did not report it to you. In 2013, we came before the board and asked for a use variance to build a solar facility on lands that were partially zoned R60 and partially zoned FNC, flood hazard. And the board granted that use variance. The board agreed with the planner that it was an inherently beneficial use, and it granted the relief. The Land Use Act has been amended by the state of New Jersey. The Land Use Act now states that no use variance relief is required. The section of the statute now says that we are a permitted use under 40:55D 66.16. Solar photovoltaic energy facility structures, certain permitted use within every municipality. And the finding is that this type of use is now, because we have a history of being an abandoned mine, we are a permitted use. And but for the fact that we started out with a use variance and have that as part of our history, what we're asking of this board does not technically require a use variance, but because we are a use variance, anything that we ask to do is a use variance again. Not a single physical change to the property is proposed, not an improvement. That would be another day with another application. And the improvements that are there, including the fencing and the landscaping, are all part of prior approvals. You'll hear that we know that some of the landscaping needs to be replaced, but we're agreeing to do so, but you'll also hear that we're not proposing any new landscape. With that as too long-winded an introduction, but I thought an important one, I'd ask if Mr. Strong, who is here this evening, could be sworn. We'll share with you his qualifications as an engineer and a planner and go right to the proofs.
Good evening, sir. Do you swear the testimony you're going to provide us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address for the record, please.
Peter W. Strong, S-T-R-O-N-G, Crest Engineering at 100 Reich Drive in Millstone, New Jersey.
Mr. Strong, I'm going to ask if you use that microphone and share with all of us your professional education and your professional and educational background.
Yes, I received a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from what was then known as Newark College of Engineering, is now New Jersey Institute of Technology in 1971. I worked for several consulting engineering firms in the central New Jersey area for about 10 years, and in 1981, sorry,
That's okay.
I started the firm of Crest Engineering with several other professionals and have been associated with that firm up until now. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, as well as a licensed professional planner.
I'll accept your
And
credentials.
I've testified before this board on numerous occasions. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. Mr. Strong, I'm going to ask if you could introduce your exhibit to the board and if you could, in a succinct manner, present the proposed subdivision.
Yes. I have an exhibit which is the minor subdivision plan that was previously submitted to the board. I don't know if you want me to mark that as an exhibit or...
Well, it looks like it's been color.
I did add some color to it, yeah.
You could then just mark it as A1, please. And
A1.
It's just the minor subdivision plan with some additional color added.
That's correct. So, as you see, the property is outlined in a yellow color, orange color, all the way around the outside. Fronts on Hoffman Station Road. On the north side of Hoffman Station Road consists currently of 76.27 acres. The westerly 2/3 was approved for and has actually had a solar farm constructed on it, which is there and operating at the current time. And the easterly portion is currently vacant except for some stormwater detention facilities. And the proposal is to subdivide the property into two pieces. The one that contains the solar farm would be 48.98 acres, and the remaining portion would be 26.29 acres.
Peter, I'm going to go through just a couple of points. There is lot 18.03, if you could identify it. That's one of the Warren family's residences, if you could just identify it for the board.
18.02, yes. Is the,
18.02.
Is the Warren
There was
family.
That is a Warren family residence, and one of the Warren family members does live there, and it's not part of the application.
Correct.
Peter, when we went before the planning board, when we went before the zoning board, we also went before the county planning board, and there were right-of-way dedications required. And it's my understanding that when the subdivision to create the Warren residence went through, there was a 40-foot half-width right-of-way requested by the county.
That's correct. When the Warren house was subdivided from the remaining portion of the property, there was a 44-foot dedication required and given to the county for the right-of-way along that roadway.
And when we went back with the larger site plan, the county had changed the designation for the road, and they asked for a 28-foot half-width, correct?
That's exactly correct, and they were given the 28-foot dedication as they requested.
So all those dedications were as required by the county, and they're in place.
That's correct.
Your calculation of the acreage of the lots that you're presenting to the board takes into consideration the dedications already.
It does.
One of the things that I've indicated that there had been some vehicles stored or staged on the property that we're asking to be subdivided. Would you place on the record what the applicant's intention is with regard to the stone that's there and the replacement that is proposed?
Yes. When the solar farm was constructed, there were two areas, one here in the front and one in the back, that were where a stone area was created for storage of materials, equipment, and vehicles for workers that were working on the solar farm. And those places were created and currently are in existence today. However, what we're proposing is that these areas would be removed and that they would be topsoiled and seeded to eliminate them altogether.
That is a representation of your applicant, Madam Chair. There's also the landscaping material across the front. In your plans, you identified landscaping materials and labeled them as landscaping previously approved and installed, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Some of it's dead or dying, and we've been asked to replace it. You could place on the record the applicant's willingness to replace or replace any of the dead and dying materials in that area.
That's correct. The applicant will replace any dead or dying materials that are currently existing out there.
And to the extent, I believe that the town holds bonds on all that landscaping. I believe they're in place, but in the event that bonds are not in place to the satisfaction of the board or the board's professionals, we're prepared to place those bonds as we go through the landscaping. Mr. Strong, there's a fire vehicle circulation path that was part of the solar facility. If you could confirm that that will not be affected and it will be memorialized in an easement so that both of these properties will be so encumbered with that fire circulation easement.
Yes, we had considerable input from the fire department at the time that the solar farm was approved and constructed, which included not only driveways within the solar field itself, but also a driveway that would circumnavigate the area between the stream and the solar farm and have a secondary access out to Hoffman Station Road. And we have that in place, and we will provide easements to perpetuate that facility for the fire department.
Similarly, there's a stormwater basin that was designed that is on the smaller lot. If you could confirm that the routing of the drainage to that is in place and that the applicant will memorialize with easements to make certain that it's preserved.
Yes, currently there are 3 stormwater facilities that are on this 26.29 acre site, one adjacent to the fence that surrounds the solar farm, one that is in kind of the central area, and another one that was created along the northeast corner of the property. All of those are in place and operating and comply with all of the regulations they're required to comply with regards to mitigating the solar farm impacts.
Madam Chair, members of the board, there's a perimeter fence that is at 8 feet in height. That fence would require variance relief. It was granted in the resolution of this board and as part of the use variance. Is there any proposed change to the fencing or gates?
There's no proposed change to the fencing, no.
And there's also a landscape plan that was approved as part of this prior approval. Is there any proposed changing to the landscaping other than this replacement as we just indicated?
No change other than the replacement of the dead and dying materials.
If I may, to make researching easy for council, I have a copy of that resolution, which do I offer it as an exhibit, or I make it?
You can provide it. If it's the board's resolution, they can certainly take notice of it.
Your benefit.
You're the best.
Mr. Strong, if we could put your planner's hat on for a moment. You heard my opening remarks about this is a D1 technically because the history or pedigree of this property
Yes.
is that this board granted a D1 variance for the solar facility.
Right.
I made the representation that the solar facility is an inherently beneficial use, and the board so noted in the resolution that I just shared with council. Is that your professional opinion, that this is an inherently beneficial use?
It is my professional opinion, and I am familiar with the resolution of approval where the board adopted that position as well.
And I read into the record that the Land Use Act has been amended and has specifically found that these solar voltaic facilities are now expressly permitted and no longer require use variance relief. Is that your understanding of the law?
Yes, I read that as well.
Technically, we are here because this is technically a D1 variance. But I think that your explanation is complete, that we're not asking for any new relief, and if we were starting fresh today, we would be in front of the planning board with no request for a D1 variance.
That is correct, yes.
Let's go. So inherently beneficial uses are uses that meet the special reasons, the negative criteria. When we presented the solar facility to this board, we identified that the activities were very low. In fact, I believe that we made representations that there would be typically one visit a month. I know that you've had the opportunity to interview Mr. Warren. Would you share with the board the actual activities that Mr. Warren has identified on the site?
Yes, the actual activity consists of, during the growing season, twice a month, they have a landscape service that comes and basically cuts the vegetation, the grasses that are growing in between the rows of solar panels, and that is the recurring activity, again, only during the growing season. Other than that, the solar farm is remotely monitored in a number of different ways, and there's no other activity such as maintenance or repair unless or until there is something detected in the monitoring that would require that somebody come to the site and do something. And my understanding is that in the several years that the facility's been operating, it only happened once, and that was to repair an electric breaker that had gone bad.
And those proofs are placed before the board because negative criteria requires an analysis of the impact on the surrounding community and the master plan. I would submit to the board that this is, as was found in 2013 and continues, this is as benign a use as exists. There are no negative impacts on the community. And Mr. Strong, just one more time, not a single physical change is proposed, just a subdivision line.
That's correct.
Madam Chair, members of the board, board professionals, I have nothing further for the board. I'm going to ask the board to consider favorably this relief after our discussion.
Mr. Razumowitz, our engineer, any comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the risk of repeating what the attorney has said, it's simply a subdivision line that's to carve off the vacant portion of the site that doesn't have any solar panels on it. Technically, we're here because it triggers an amended use, amended preliminary and final site plan. In addition to the subdivision. They've agreed to meet my review letter, which just a couple technical comments on the subdivision. But most importantly, some of the landscaping that's on that berm, they've agreed to replace any of the dead landscaping, which was all approved by this board when the solar panels came in. The site's been operating, haven't had any issues with the solar farm, and that's it. I have no other comments.
Thank you.
Our planner, Mika?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Strong, if I may just clarify certain items. First of all, this subdivision would be filed by deed,
We plan on doing it by map.
by map?
Yeah, we
Okay,
prefer to do it by map.
thank you. And would there be any cross-access easement between the two lots created because of the emergency
As
access?
Mr.
Yes.
Strong indicated, there'll be the cross circulation, including the fire and cross drainage.
That's correct.
And I would recommend that be approved by our board attorney and board engineer as if the board sees this fit. Thank you.
Acceptable.
The other question I have is, in terms of fencing, I believe, there is the existing fencing all around the solar field. But as I understand, there is a fence being proposed, or does that already exist, a fence and a gate, which is 6 foot height along that emergency access?
There is an existing 6-foot-high fence. It's already in place. It's not being proposed.
And that is to remain, and,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The parking, you've testified, it's a mostly unmanned facility. For my understanding, when the maintenance crew has to come, they access the site directly from Hoffman Station Road and would not be accessing it from the new lot that's being created. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
there is a separate access to the west of the Warren home, approximately here, and there's an area for 2 parking spaces in that location that the board approved at the time that the original site plan was approved.
Thank you. And there is no signage or no additional lighting that's being
No
proposed?
signage, no lighting, no.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for clarifying regarding the landscaping. I think we had that question. And regarding, replanting some of the existing parking. Now, in terms of coming to the planning testimony, I just want to clarify for the board. Mr. Pape and I did have a very brief discussion. This application was before the board for use variance in 2013. Per the MLUL, when solar facility has been deemed as an inherently beneficial use. Further, when they are located on, any kind of landfill or closed resource extract operation facilities, they are technically a permitted use. I believe that law went into effect in 2011. However, this application was before and approved in 2013. Having said that, and the application having been granted a use variance, they are subdividing, and that's why they are before you to seek another use variance. In my professional opinion, I would agree with Mr. Strong. There is no, greater in terms of it is site suitable, the use exists on the property, they have subdivided it, and they are still maintaining the buffers and berms, which is usually the concern when it comes to solar facilities. Just wanted to clear that it would be a use variance, an amended use variance, because of the subdivision that they are approving based on the 2013 application that this board had granted.
Thank you. No? Any board members, any questions? No? Okay, at this point, I'm going to open it up to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to be heard on this application, come forward. Come forward, state your name, spell your last name, and your address.
Michelle Arminio, 9 Nathaniel Street. Going to swear me in?
Do you swear any testimony you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Now and always. Okay, my question is, when this originally was granted for the solar farm, what was the lot size necessary for that variance granting? Well, you said something about 26 point something acres. Is that the full acreage?
The full acreage is just over 75 acres. The solar facility will continue on a parcel that's just under 49 acres, and the vacant lot is approximately 25 acres.
Oh, okay. But my question is, what was the necessary acreage for the solar farm? Was it more than the 49 acres?
It actually, because it was a use variance and because it was in the R60 zone, the minimum lot size was 60,000 square feet.
And that's a little over
An acre
a
and a half.
builder's acre.
An
Yeah,
acre and a
well,
half.
right. Okay, so 49 is the acreage there. So in other words, my real point for the question was, you are not, the acreage that was necessary for the farm is not being changed by this subdivision? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public wishing to be heard? Seeing none, I look for a motion to close public portion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Board members?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second. Mr. Jaffe, second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lupo?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Jaffe?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Dr. Kenzie?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Damiani?
Yes. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night. And we'll get a copy of the,
Oh, on the record, if I may, if the board wishes, the applicant will provide the transcript to the board secretary and to the board's attorney at no cost to the town. If the board wishes the transcript to be the official record, we would have no objection to that being the case.
Thank you, Mr. Pape.
We'll deliver it to you.
Thank you.
promptly.
okay. Yeah, I know. Take all the time you need.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeffrey, you have a stenographer too?
No, we chatted to take a recording.
Okay. Our next application, BA-5220-22, Waterside Monroe Realty LLC, request for use variance with a bulk variance, represented by Jeffrey Chang. Hello.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, board professionals. My name is Jeffrey Chang, law firm Fox Rothschild out of Princeton. I have the pleasure of representing Waterside Monroe Realty LLC this evening on a use variance for 65 additional age-restricted units, in addition to a bulk variance for the parking space size. We're proposing 9 by 18 and 9 by 20s, where 10 by 20 feet is required in the zone. Just want to confirm with Mr. Vignolo that the notice was complete and accurate.
This will confirm that I did review the affidavits of mailing publication, and the board has jurisdiction to hear this application.
Perfect, thank you. The project is located at 1 Overlook Drive, Block 27, Lot 9.04, Monroe Township. This is a bifurcated application. If we're successful this evening with the use variance, we certainly will come back for a preliminary and final site plan at a later date. The property is located in the PRC, Planned Retirement Community District Zone. The property is approximately 6.65 acres and is currently improved with 99 age-restricted rentals. We're using the term senior transitional housing because that's, you'll hear as I go through some of the history, that's what it was classified administratively by Monroe Township. I think it's important to go through some of the history. We outlined it in pretty detail. November 28th, 2022, we submitted a memo to the board and board professionals. And noting that the PRC zone was established by adoption of ordinance on May 25th, 1979. With regard to this property, it was part of a consent order before the New Jersey Superior Court dated February 20th, 1991, docket number L-11899-90PW, which allowed the previous owner of the property, Clearbrook Partners LP, to construct up to 4 buildings of assisted living and or nursing care not to exceed 300 units. Thereafter, Clearbrook applied for preliminary and final major site plan approval for waterside villas and the construction of 140 units. And there was a requirement to actually construct 72 parking spaces where 108 spaces were required. And the provision that additional spaces be shown as a banked green space on the property. The Clearbrook site plan application was approved by the planning board March 28th, 1996, memorialized by resolution PB number 273-96 on April 25th, 1996. And 2004, as part of resident compliance review, Clearbrook revised its preliminary and final major site plans, reducing the building's footprint and reducing the units down to 99, which is where it stands currently. The township engineer at the time reviewed and revised the plans and provided administrative approval May 20th, 2004. All these documents we submitted after we had a TRC with your professionals and we dug through the record. And thereafter, Director of Planning and Environmental Protection for Monroe Township sent a letter dated June 2nd, 2004, confirming that it would be 99 units. And we did have a CO when our clients took title to this property a number of years ago. So as part of the relief that we're seeking, we're asking for 65 additional units. 52 of them would be market rate and 13 would be affordable. As I discussed earlier, there's a request for parking variance where 9 by 18 feet and 9 by 20 feet spaces are being requested. The civil engineer will go through the plans to show where those are located and the number of them. And we just want to emphasize that the proposed use will be supported by NJSA 4055D-2, A, D, G, H, L, and M. I did not want to belabor it. I could read it certainly into the record, but Mr. Mark Remsa, our planner, will put that into the record this evening. With that being said, I know some of the things that are important were the operations of the current site as it is and as it currently functions and what we're anticipating in the future if we are successful. We did do an operations memo a few months back and we submitted that to the record, but I do have Brenda Cristiano, who's the general manager of the applicant. She can certainly go through any particulars, and we actually have the property manager who's there daily to be here as well. I don't plan on calling her, Cecilia Capitano. However, she is here to answer any questions that the board may have about operations. And I'll have Sharif Ali, the civil engineer, testify, Brent Porter, the architect, to show the building as it currently stands and what's being proposed. And then Lee Klein will do the traffic analysis, and Mark Remsa, as I said, will be the planner. So with that being said, shall we swear in, qualify them all at once or separately?
Separately.
Okay. So with that being said, if I could, Brenda Cristiano, sit next to me. So you'll get, raise your hand. Oh, sure. That's all good. So extend.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address for the record.
Brenda Cristiano, Cristiano, 750 Iron Latch Road, Franklin Lakes, New Jersey.
So Brenda, we did submit the operations memo February 7th, 2023, which I know you're familiar with. If you could just, I'll just guide you with some of the major questions that highlight some of the things I want to share on the record. Could you go through the day in the life of the facility? Kind of, who are your residents, what the age of the residents are, the demographic essentially.
Sure. Waterside Villas is age restricted.
Bring it closer. I'm sorry.
Age restricted transitional housing. It comprises 99 units, 2 bedrooms and 1 bedroom. The age of the residents are in their 70s.
And it would be clear that they're mobile. They have some of them have cars. Some of them choose not to have cars.
Absolutely, they're pretty mobile. They about 55% of the population of the property have cars, so around 50 to 60 cars are parked in the lot on a typical day. And then the rest, the 45%, they utilize the buses provided by the town.
And then can you describe briefly the common area usage that we currently have on site?
Sure. We have a gym that it's open 24/7. We also have a game room where there's also a TV room, a clubhouse, and then each floor has a sitting area, kind of like a living room where everyone gathers. There's one on each floor. We also have a community garden. Yeah.
And then how are deliveries made to the property? Is it kind of like the normal Amazon comes and delivers, and where
Yes,
does it go and how's it get?
So we have a concierge area, and we get deliveries from Amazon, FedEx, and they come, I would say maybe 10 times throughout the day, the deliveries. They come through the front door, and then we have a concierge person that delivers them.
And then can you highlight some of the safety and fire provisions in place for Waterside currently?
Well, we have fire extinguishers in each floor, and then also the property goes through the typical fire inspections required.
And it's clear that it is correct that you guys have key cards for certain times of the day to access the property, correct?
Yes.
And then visitors, how is that normally handled? When do visitors generally come to the property? Do they take the residents out off the property to, let's say, a Mother's Day lunch, things of that nature? And how are they brought back to the property?
Yes, we have visitors every day. However, they're mostly during the weekends. I would say that's the peak hour for the visitors. They come to the site to see their family members, but they also take them with them for holidays or for the weekend.
Gotcha. Those were the general highlights that I wanted to share with the board. Obviously, it is a use variance, so it is important, the function of it, Waterside, but it's been in place for a number of decades at this juncture. It has, from my understanding, I talked to the zoning officer earlier this week, no issue, no active zoning violation or anything like that. It's worked well with the community. Before we came to this, we actually met with the Ponds Executive Board July of 2022 to tell them our plans. I invited them to come to this meeting as well to gather their support. They had no concerns at that time. The only thing they mentioned was, if down the road, if this is all successful, please coordinate construction with them so that we wouldn't bother the residents at an early morning, or especially on the weekends. But those are the only things that we received as feedback. Otherwise, they thought it was a good product for the community. It is rental apartments. It offers residents an ability to not own a place as they transition to the next phase of their life. So that is, I'll open Brenda to questions from the board if you should have any. I know it was laid out clearly also, I hope, in the February 7th memo.
Board members, any questions for the applicant?
Just for the record, I think I read before I came here, the minimum age restriction is what?
55.
55. Thank you.
That's it, your next.
Sure.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask the definition
Mr.
of
Jaffe.
transitional housing. Can you clarify the definition of transitional housing?
Transitional housing, it's not the assisted living under NJAC 8:36. There are no medical professionals at the facilities. The people who are there are mobile. They allow them to use cars. They walk around. The only thing that we offer that can be kind of considered medical is a third-party physical therapist. Agility is what they're called. It's just a service to the residents. Otherwise, there's no medical. There's no nursing on staff or anything like that. Does that answer your question, Mr. Jaffe?
Yes, thank you.
So with that being said,
Madam Chair, I have
Yeah,
a
I'm
couple
sorry.
of questions.
Mika or Planner?
Thank you. Ms. Cristiano, just very briefly, how is the food and cafeteria operations handled on the property? I believe there are some
Yes.
facilities that are offered. If you
We
could.
have a dining room, and we offer breakfast in the morning from 9 to 10 in the morning. However, only, I would say, 20 residents utilize that because all the apartments have full kitchens.
Okay, so there is no food preparation on the premises?
No, we offer dry breakfast, like muffins, bagels, that type of thing.
Okay. And with this proposed addition, would there be one cafeteria area for all the residents, or are you going to divide it between the new building and the old building?
I believe we're trying to have cohesiveness.
Okay.
The new wing and the old wing so that they would share the same space. I think that's the goal. Obviously, something that we would certainly discuss and flesh out further on a site plan if we were successful this evening.
Okay, thank you. And the deliveries for these food deliveries, how often do you expect them on the site? Is it once a weekly?
There is no deliveries. Usually the property manager picks up the breakfast food and brings it to the site.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam
That's it. Mark, do you have any? No. Okay, you're next to it.
Sure, and Ms. Cristiano can certainly be recalled if there's any
Sure.
further questions. If I could, I'd like to have Sharif Ali, professional engineer from Amertech Engineering, testify. I know he's been here a number of times. If you could swear in. It got warmer in this room, I feel like, right? It went from-
I know, my eyes are drying out. I'm like,
My throat's dry all of a sudden.
the tropicals. Now
Those
it's
are
too
me,
hot.
but,
I know, my eyes are just.
Yeah, I will. Sharif, if you. You've been here a few times, I believe, Sharif.
A few times.
A few.
Couple.
Do you swear the testimony going to provide us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address, please, for the record.
Sharif Ali, A-L-Y.
Professional address, Mr. Ali.
757 Ridgewood Avenue in North Brunswick, Amertech Engineering.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Ali, could you walk us through the plan that you prepared? Please mark the exhibits.
Shang, we're going to qualify him, or
Yeah.
we're working with the idea that
Oh.
he's here on a regular basis?
That's fine. If you want to qualify, sure.
Just so we can
Yeah.
cover how we're handling
Sure.
the record.
If you want to go through your educational background, if you've been before this board, if your license is still in good standing.
We'll accept him. He's-
Okay.
We've seen him up here.
Since
a lot.
last you appeared and qualified as an expert in the area of professional engineering, have your credentials been detrimentally affected at all?
Not at all.
Perfect, thank you.
That's what I was waiting you to do.
Yes.
I wanted to know, I don't like this
I
stuff.
like the
on
engine.
All right, no
I
problem.
defer to you, but it's fine. So yeah, Mr. Ali, if you could you go through the aerial that you have, the site plan, the use variance plan itself, describe the zoning and how you came with some of the bulk standards that you've calculated,
Yeah, sure.
and what surrounds us.
The reason that we have, well, there will be Exhibit A. That's the
A1,
first
please.
one. A1.
Thank you. If you could just describe what A1 is?
So
You need the mic.
A1 is an
Mr. Ali,
Mike.
the mic.
Just grab it.
Well, it's 2 minutes here. So A1 is an aerial of the entire area of Clearbrook, which we are part of that. We are part of Clearbrook Community, Section 1 to 18, and as well as the ponds at Clearbrook. We're not part of Concordia. So the the reason we have that to bring your attention to 1979 ordinance, not the current ordinance, the PRC ordinance, the original one, the Rossmar, Clearbrook, Concordia, Whittingham. So we are in that ordinance, in 1979 ordinance. And the reason that you heard Jeffrey's talking about the consent judgment order in 91, because the ponds at Clearbrook is only 142 acres. And to be in the PRC, you have to be 400 acres. So that was ruled at the time that we are part of Clearbrook, and the PRC governed the whole entire area. So the ponds at Clearbrook consist of 4 different sites. Phase 1, Phase 2, it's all residential. That's the area, as you see, around the that large island there on the pond. And then you have the commercial area, and you have the assisted care facility. They were all part of the ponds at Clearbrook, which they are in part related to the whole entire Clearbrook community. So the reason we're saying that, because all of our bulk requirement goes back to 1979 and goes back to the whole entire Clearbrook area. Section 1 to 18 and the 2 phases for the ponds at Clearbrook. So with that said, do we exceed the minimum requirement, the 400 acres? Yes, we do. We have a total of 600 plus acres. By the way, we are located on the northeast quadrant of Union Valley and Half Acre Road. So if you wonder why Union Valley and Half Acre Road, because the road never existed until Section 18 of Clearbrook finished that road, and they didn't know how to name it, so they called it Half Acre all the way at the top, and Union Valley at the bottom, so they joined both of them with Union Valley and Half Acre Road. It's just a name. Throughout Monroe, you will see a lot of that. Actually, Monroe and Old Bridge and Jamesburg. So we in that vicinity, and you heard that we about 6.7 acres. You heard that what's out there is 99 units. Even the consent judgment order allow 300 units. And also the resolution, as Jeffrey said, in 96 allowed 140 units. Anyway, but we have 99, and we are here to add another 65 units. So that's pretty much, in general, the location of the site and where we at with Clearbrook and the ponds at Clearbrook. So the color rendering is the,
Mark this as A2.
A2. And I'm going to take you through some of the PRC bulk requirement to show that we are in compliance with each one of the requirement. So I mentioned before the 400 acres, the minimum, and part of that you have to have the golf course, which is Clearbrook, and we are 600 acres plus 603 with the building coverage. And we do, if you look at the cover sheet, you'll see the calculations for the building coverage, and it's for the whole entire Clearbrook and the ponds at Clearbrook. And you wonder how I came up with that. That's because there is a lot of history there. As Amertech, we pretty much were involved with Clearbrook, we're involved with the ponds at Clearbrook, with the assisted care approval and the commercial. So we went back to the record and we got the calculations from the last section, the ponds at Clearbrook, and we have provided your professional with copies of that. So we're not coming with anything from the air. It's all in the record. Monroe has all this stuff. So you'll see that on the cover sheet that the calculation for the building coverage, what's required, 20%, and we have 17.2. 17.1, what's existing right now is the facility as is, and when we add a little bit of coverage on this site here for the addition will be 17.2. You will also see that the minimum landscape open space, we're calling the green, what's required is 50% in the PRC if you have 400 acres minimum. And what we have, which is not being provided, but I'll put a testimony to that, is 65%. And we can provide the calculation for that. That's not a problem at all. The minimum setbacks, obviously, it's 40 feet all the way around the tracks. We have more than that. With the addition to, we have 135 feet. So we are way back from Union Valley Road. So we meet the requirement, this bulk requirement. As far as the maximum building height, which is very interesting story there, is that at the time of doing the PRC, they figured that 20% within that zone could go up to 55 feet in height, 2-story or 55 feet. So if you in Concordia or Whittingham or Rossmar, the old communities, you will see that some of the building 2-story and higher than that. So with that said, we not even close to that 20% for the whole entire Clearbrook community. We only 6%, so we meet that requirement. And our building, by the way, is not even 55 feet. We 43.8, so let's call it 44 feet. So we meeting the requirement for that. The addition that we have, so I'm going to give you some boring numbers here. The existing building on the ground, the building coverage on the ground is 43,173, and it's on the cover sheet if I mess up with the numbers. Adding the floor, there's 3 floors on top of each other, I'm still in the existing, it's about 127,900 and change. Now with the addition is 25,656. Adding the floor in, including that, the total will be 196,550 and change. So the addition, again, we talked about 65 units. So we about 165 at the end of the day when this is approved. We're still not even close to 300 units that were permitted. So that's as far as the building coverage and as far as the bulk requirement. With the parking, 1979 ordinance, they have a way of, I don't know how they came up with the parking requirement, but they do it basically the total floor and you divide it by about 1,000 square feet. So with that said, you come up with 128 spaces. However, the assisted care facility or a facility similar to this with the residential side improvement standard, they only allow, what you have is a half space per unit, so you only need 82. Our traffic consulting will tell you that you somewhere in between, and that is the practice out there and what he's been seeing out there. But at the end of the day, we seen it, what is needed, 120 spaces and 132 spaces, and we are providing 120. And the reason for that, because we, like everybody else, we get the credit from the EV parking spaces, the electrical vehicles. So we have about 18 designated electrical vehicle spaces, as well as 7 ADA, American with Disability Act spaces, and they all within the vicinity. So as far as the,
Sharif,
You have to
we should
stop. You what? Just left.
Samir.
I'm sorry, we have a pause for a second.
It's good for me.
One of the board members stepped out.
Sorry. That's okay. We need you.
Okay, you can resume.
So as far as, so I'm done with the bulk requirement and the parking requirement. And one variance is required. Mr. Remso probably argued with me. I call it design exception. He calls it a variance because it's in the ordinance, and he's right. So the 10 by 20 spaces is required, and it's still in the ordinance, never going to change. We have a combination of 10 by 20, 10 by 9 by 20 and 9 by 18. The new spaces that we are adding, which the area in the back, the 9 by 18. But now everybody driving small cars, and our traffic consulting will tell you that you don't need any more 10 by 20. It's just with the current regulation for stormwater and flooding that has been hitting us every year, everybody trying to reduce the impervious coverage. So green is better than blacked up.
It is in the RSIS standard 9 by 18, Sharif.
And we are this is a residential community, and it's 9 by 18. So the state recognized that as 9 by 18. As nationally, they recognize about 9 by 18. And I hope Monroe one of these days they change their ordinance to 9 by 18. So that's as far as that. But as far as the layout, it's pretty much the same layout. You're coming in. This is very interesting too. The name of the road is Overlook Drive. So if you're on Union Valley Road and you live in the intersection of Union Valley Half Acre Road, and you're making, the turn, the first intersection going east, that is Overlook. It's a shared driveway that is shared by the ponds at Clearbrook commercial site. It's supposed to be a commercial site, but I don't know what's out there now. But commercial site as well as the assisted care facility or our facility right now, that what you see. So that shared driveway, that's what you see in dark gray, and as you're coming in, and you'll see the facility in the light brown, I call it light brown, and you'll see the parking lot and the distribution and the two-way traffic in and out the parking aisles. So the addition will be attached to one of the wings, which I would call it the southwest wing, and you see it in dark green. But what's interesting, this is very deceiving because the addition actually over portion of the parking lot. And in that particular area, obviously the ground floor is parking spaces, and the second and the third floor, they are units. So that's our layout, and that is the addition. There is an increase in previous coverage. We have very slight increase in previous coverage. It's about 15,000 and change. Let's say 15,314, which is pretty much about 0.35 acres. At the time of the site plan, if this application is approved, obviously we will comply with all the green infrastructures. That's the game right now, with the drainage and stormwater management. So we will do that. We also supplied you with the landscaping plan that to show that the whole entire area around the perimeter of the site is already landscaped, and we will add more if there's any gaps in the area, in addition to parking lot landscaping too. So you heard that we have a recreation, and we will add more to the recreation. The area in the back will add more of what's very popular now is farming and the planting area there. So if I see in the staff report asking for a gathering or a plaza area in the back, sure, we could do that. But this facility from day one, and your board back then, insisted on having a lot of walking trails. So you see all the walking all around the facility. But we also use that for fire truck, emergency vehicles. That's why if you wonder why there's two sidewalks or walk areas side by side, that's because allowing for a fire truck to drive on top of that. So we have a lot of green.
There'll also be outdoor activities, correct? Outdoor exercise activities.
Yeah, so exercise area, yes. And if we ask for a plaza, yes, we can also, or gathering area, we can add to the existing patio, and we could do that. So that's what we have. And the facility obviously is equipped with sewer, water, the on-site, actually, the mains that providing sewer and water to the ponds at Clearbrook. They traverse the site from south to north. So if we need to add another water connection for fire protection. For the additional building, obviously we'll do that at the site plan, and it will be going to the MUD for an application. So that's all I have.
So basically, it's 3 stories with the
It's
carport underneath?
the existing is a 3-story, and they are matching the roof of the existing, which is the 43 or 44 feet, but we still way below what is the requirement in the PRC,
And the
the
fire,
55.
the fire department
The
is
fire
okay.
department is living with this building as is. I don't think we have any
No problems.
violation or any complaint, but obviously, once we secure your blessing here, we'll be sitting down with the fire department. But as I indicated, we still have a way out for a fire truck to come all the way around.
Mark, you have any comments for him?
I'll hold my comments till they're completed with their testimony.
Okay. Mika, anything?
Madam Chair, I do have a couple of questions. Mr. Ali, starting with the building height, I'm not sure if you've reviewed my memo of March 24th, 2023. I think one question that I raised referring to the 1979 ordinance, which you did provide us, so thank you. It does say about building height to not exceed more than 2 stories or 35 feet, but it does allow for sections of PRCs whose site development plan was approved prior to the adoption of the zoning ordinance. I think my question was, based on all the zoning history analysis that you've provided, your team has provided, and I wasn't born in 1975, so I don't. So just going back to that statement and that requirement of 20% being allowed to be 55, how would you justify that is being applicable to this site? It wasn't approved prior to the zoning ordinance, was it?
Well, if you, and I believe I did provide the cover sheets for the approved 1996 assisted care facility, as well as the phase 2 of the ponds at Clearbrook. And if you look at the bulk requirement there, you will see that specifically says exactly what we have here. So all I did is that I mirror image what we did back in 1996, and at that time, that's how the board see it, and that's how we following their the footstep of the prior approval. So with that said, again, the consent judgment order that it says we are part of the PRC 1979 ordinance is the ordinance that you have to will be applied to this site, and I'll be more than happy to give you a copy of the approved assisted care facility, and you'll see exactly that the bulk requirement that we are indicating here, same as 79 ordinance and 1996 approval by the board.
Okay. I would defer that to the board because, again, with the history of this site and how it was, used at that time, I did review the resolution, I did review the consent judgment, and I did review the zoning ordinance. I did not find, the resolution didn't say as to what criteria is applicable. I was going with the language. But based on Mr. Ali's testimony and his prior knowledge of the 1996 approval, if the board did agree with the building height calculation, not taking into the literal sense as to what the zoning ordinance is saying, and they applied that 20%, then I would defer to board to, agree or not agree with that, the building height requirement. The other question I had, I just want to clarify, I know it'll be a total of 164 units, right? I think I heard 165. I just want to clarify on
Did I say
record.
165? No,
Yeah.
it's 164.
Okay, thank you. The other question about off-street parking. I do understand the justification that the traffic engineer has provided, and we'll get into the definition in the justification of that. But the PRC district requirement, again, going back to the 1979, it had the 1.5 per unit, and then it had the medical facility requirement, which was per square footage. I did not see in the 1996 approval as to what ratio was approved. All it said is you're allowed 72 parking spaces where 108 parking spaces are required. So I understand the RSIS standards are being proposed, but based on what is being proposed, what ratio would you apply? Like, what does the zone require and what is being proposed? Again, keeping in mind that there will be a testimony as to why the number of parking spaces are proposed.
Again, I'm going to go back to the 1996 and what the board approved at the time, and that's what we followed. That's the reason that we've given you 3 different analyses. One is the 1979 ordinance and what the board has approved, and that is, again, on the stamped cover sheet approved site plan by your board back in 1996, and it specifically says the total floor, and you divide that by 1,000 square feet. That's what we have, and that's what I have in front of me, and I believe again that I did provide this map to the professionals.
So that approval was for 140 units.
That approval was for the numbers. I think it was 140 units, yeah.
So is it your recollection, again, I didn't have it in resolution, but basically it said you will be allowed the building square footage of 140 units and your ratio will be allowed, divided that by 1,000 is equal to 1 space?
The gross floor area, yes.
Okay.
3 floors.
And then ultimately, it boiled down to 99 units administratively, and it applied, I guess,
I believe what happened is
only
that
102 spaces.
what was approved in 1996 was approved for 108 spaces.
Mm-hmm.
However, the facility, Jeffrey, help.
Was
in
administrative,
98 or
99.
99.
Yeah. It was,
Yeah. So at that time, I think the market, Monroe, with I would say at least 4 or 5 assisted care facility were built first prior to this one in Monroe, and I can name a few of them.
2004.
2004. So at that time, probably the market and the owner of the facility felt that 140 is not the number and 99 is the number. So they went to the building department with a letter from, let's call it the zoning office, allowing for the 99 units since it's less than 140. And also with that, a reduction of parking from 108 to 72, and if they need more, they recognize that there is more green space that could be added to the site. So I think that was a market reason, the reason that they went to 99 at that time.
Okay, I want to be correct for the record as to, and I think Mr. Chang would want to be specific on that as to what is the ratio that we are applying for the number of parking spaces? I mean, you are applying the RSIS standards, but that's for assisted living. You're not proposing an assisted living, you're proposing a senior transitional facility. The zone only has certain set of standards, like it's per unit, or it's for a medical facility, it's for so-and-so. So I just want to be clear on record as to what is the ratio of parking spaces that you're seeking.
I'll leave that for our traffic consulting, but I can tell you from experience here in Monroe, and the board here has been hearing this so many times. You have mentioned that for apartments 1.5, 1.5 spaces per unit. A similar facility to that they use
That's not for apartment, that's for the single family dwelling units, I believe. Yeah, I think so.
That's for apartments. I mean, if I could,
Yeah,
if we could
for
have-
each dwelling unit.
When Lee Klein, the traffic engineer, comes, we can
Yeah.
answer these questions.
But I just want to put for the record, when Stratford, and that was the first affordable housing units were delivered to Monroe, Stratford apartment, which is very similar to the facility that we are talking about here, and they were hit was 1.5, and when you go there at Stratford on Halsey Reed, and we put a testimony before the board on that one on a different application, half of the spaces there being occupied.
No,
So,
Mr. Ali, I agree with the
Make sure
justification.
that the board is feeling comfortable that the ratio that is being used here is not 0.5 as per residential, but we're using 0.74 or 0.8. So we are very comfortable with that. And also the existing facility as exists right now, if you go there, you'll see half of the parking lot is empty. But I'll leave that up to the traffic consultant, but I'm just bringing some of the history and what we have in town.
Yeah, agreed. Again, like I agree. I mean, the justification, I did drive by the site. I agree with that. I just want to be clear for the record as to what is the ratio we are applying for the entire site when it comes to 164 units.
One space per 1,000 gross floor area is how you calculate it?
Yes.
That's the standard that we're requesting. And that's part of the 1996 approvals.
Let's
correct?
just hear our consulting.
No. Okay, fine. That's fine.
We'll hear our
Yes.
consultant.
Okay, with that being said, I'll add you.
Okay, I'll move on. The couple of other questions, again, I understand this is bifurcated and, the site design and landscaping questions will come later as we move along. In terms of the berming around the Union Valley Road, that is to be maintained, right, as you understand, with this addition?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure of that. And the last question, again, we'll probably defer that in the site plan section, but would there be any signage and all of that would be something when you would apply for a site plan in terms of signage changes and all that?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that we have no frontage on Union Hill Road, and you see that on the site plan.
Just use the mic.
The frontage on Union Valley Road belongs to the Ponza Clearbrook Phase 2. That's this area right here.
Yeah, but I believe there's like a little bit of berming on your site, right, where the property line is. Currently there is. The green area that's in front of your dark brown. That is currently bermed, right?
Yeah, it's not really berming, but landscaped area, yes.
And that is to be maintained?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have nothing
for now. Okay.
Is there any further questions for Mr. Ali? I have nothing directly for him.
He'll
You're
be
holding
there.
your question. Okay. If I could have Lee Klein, traffic engineer, addressing the questions that came up from Ms. Apty. If I could have Lee sworn in and qualified as expert witness in traffic, I think he's been before this board as well.
No, I don't think I have. No.
Different board.
First time for
Do
everyone.
you swear the testimony you're going to provide us this meeting the whole truth and nothing?
I do.
You can state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address for the record, please.
Lee, middle initial D as in Daniel, Klein, Klein, Klein Traffic Consulting, 156 Walker Road, West Orange, New Jersey.
And if you could tell the board your educational background, your qualifications, and also confirm that your licenses are all in good standing.
Absolutely. Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Rutgers University, professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. My license is current and in good standing. Also a nationally certified professional traffic operations engineer, and that national certification is current. I've been accepted as an expert in traffic engineering and parking analysis in well over 100 boards throughout New Jersey. I've worked in.
We'll accept your
Thank you.
answers.
So Lee, could you just walk us through, responses to the township planner, and also just in general your analysis? Your traffic report was dated.
Yeah, I was going to go through.
Yeah, if you could just enter into the record as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I prepared a traffic engineering and parking analysis report dated August 8th, 2022. And in that report, I looked at the trip generation comparison of the existing facility with the 99 units, the proposed facility with 164 units, to come up with the increase in the amount of traffic that will be generated by the additional units proposed. I have a table in that report, Table 1, Trip Generation Summary, Waterside Villas, and what the calculations show based on the Trip Generation Manual 11th edition, prepared. That's a publication by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. The trip generation for the additional units would be 13 trips in the morning peak hour. That would be 4 vehicles entering and 9 vehicles exiting in that peak hour. During the PM peak hour, a total of 16 additional trips, 9 entering and 7 exiting. And on a Saturday peak hour, 21 total peak hour trips from the addition, 11 entering and 10 exiting. So when we look at trip generation, we look at the amount of trips that are generated by the peak hour. The New Jersey Department of Transportation, as well as the Institute of Transportation Engineers, identify that less than 100 peak hour trips is not a significant increase in traffic, and therefore a full traffic analysis with traffic counts and intersection analysis is not warranted. Because we're looking at a vehicle entering or exiting in the morning peak hour, 1 every 4 minutes, additional trips. Same with the PM peak hour, 1 additional trip either entering or exiting every 4 minutes. And on a Saturday, 1 additional trip entering or exiting every 3 minutes on average. So again, that's not a significant increase in traffic, so we wouldn't go out and do traffic counts and traffic analysis. To talk a little bit about, and I think Sharif already mentioned, 9 by 18 parking spaces and 9 by 20 parking spaces are proposed, where the residential site improvement standards requirements are 9 by 18. And as Mr. Ali said, impervious coverage, trying to keep that down. We're trying to keep that those spaces a little bit smaller if we could. So 9 by 18 and 9 by 20s is what we're proposing. The parking supply, we're proposing 120 parking spaces for the 164 units. That's a ratio of 0.73 parking spaces per dwelling unit. The Institute of Transportation Engineers also has a parking generation manual, 5th edition, and in that manual there is data for assisted living and senior adult housing facilities, and they've got data at actual facilities, senior adult housing, that's 55 and older, where different engineers like myself go out and do actual traffic counts. They send that data to the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and they compile that. So the average parking demand for senior adult housing in the overnight hours between 10 p.m. and I think it's 8 a.m., the average is 0.61 parked cars per dwelling unit, which in our case would be 101 parked cars, and we've got 120 parking spaces. And the 85th percentile peak parking demand in the overnight hours is 0.67 parked cars per unit, and that would be 110. And again, we've got 120 proposed parking spaces. So based on the average and the 85th percentile of the data that's collected at other facilities similar to this, we feel that we have enough parking proposed with the 120. And as you heard from Ms. Cristiano, about 55% of the current tenants do not, or 55% do own cars and 45% do not. So, and that's right in that same ratio. Since there's 99 units, It's about a 0.55 parking ratio. And we're at 0.73 proposed, and the Institute of Transportation Engineers is 0.61 or 0.67. So again, we have, I think, adequate parking with the 120 spaces for the 164 units.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Thank you for that testimony. In terms of the ITE ratio, now were they, as you might have heard, the discussion about assisted living and senior transitional unit, is there any difference, or is that a general ITE standard that's applied of 0.73 per unit?
It's senior adult housing.
Okay.
And that's also my trip generation. Senior adult housing, I could read part of the definition. Multifamily sites, senior adult housing multifamily sites are independent living developments that are called various names, including retirement communities, age-restricted housing, and active adult communities. So I think we fit that definition.
Okay, thank you. So again, Mr. Chang, to clarify, I understand the testimony that has been provided, that it is the ratio of 0.73 per unit. And I would also look to Mr. Razmovich to kind of give his opinion on this. Is that a variance you're seeking? Because again, such kind of ratio doesn't exist in the zone as it stands. You know, like there is either the per unit, either the medical facility. So I understand the justification. I'm sure the board does, but to make it clear on the record, is that a variance, or is that something you'll be dealing with at the site plan?
I mean, I'd probably reserve it for the site plan.
Okay.
That would be my answer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Klein.
If there's any further question from Mr. Klein, that concludes his direct testimony. Mr. Razumowitz, I don't know if...
Mr. Razumowitz?
So just to clarify, currently there's 102 parking stalls on the site, and you have 99 units.
Correct.
And you're adding 65, and you're only increasing the parking by 18 spaces?
Correct.
And your testimony is that that's adequate?
Correct.
So I see in your report at the end, it indicates you have a surplus of 1 parking spot?
So we also did a calculation based on 0.8 parking spaces per dwelling unit. I can't remember where that number came from, but that was a number that I used. And again, this is from August, this report. So I don't know if that was a number that was here at some point.
Previous application.
So that was 0.8 per dwelling unit, required 132, and then we take the 10% off for providing 15% electric vehicle. That ends up with 119, and we have 120, so we have a surplus of 1.
So my concern is obviously the parking and whether it is adequate. And if it's not adequate, the overflow parking is going to carry over into the other commercial uses in the area and taking up those stalls. So my suggestion is, should it get approved tonight for the use variance, at the time of site plan, maybe look at areas for bank parking. If some bank parking could be provided, in case. My concern is if you don't have the area to build it and you need additional parking, it's going to cause a problem for the other uses that are, just across the street there, the commercial uses.
Okay.
So,
but as you heard,
that would be my suggestion.
Okay, as you heard from the general manager, 55 or so, 60 parking spaces are being used, so they're actually at a lower ratio than even the ITE numbers. So that's why I think we're pretty confident. We have actual data.
Certainly at site plan, if we're successful this evening, we will certainly see where we can do it, bank parking.
Yeah, I think that might provide a level of comfort.
Sure.
Looking at your plan, the aerial view, there's quite a number of vehicles in the parking lot based on what you submitted.
Yeah, good comment. Certainly, we can do that for sure.
Thank you.
Mika, it's done? Any board members? No. Your next witness?
Sure.
Or that's...
We'll go to architecture. I jumped to Lee because of the traffic question. But if we could have Mr. Brent Porter, from R&D Design Group, be sworn in, and then I guess we'll qualify.
Good evening, sir. You swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
I
truth.
do.
Could you state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address?
Okay,
please?
Brent M. Porter, architect, Porter, my last name, first name Brent, Brent.
And if you could go through your professional qualifications.
I-
Thanks.
I'm a
Can you lower the microphone, too?
I'm a licensed architect in New Jersey and New York. I've graduated from the University of Kansas in Lawrence and received my master's at Penn State. Until COVID hit and my courses were not going to be offered, I retired after 47 years at the Pratt Institute School of Architecture in Brooklyn and Manhattan. And I'm very pleased to get to do the architecture now for you. As you'll see,
We'll accept your credentials.
thank you. Oh, okay, thank you. First of all, this is the old and the new, if you will. On the left, the new facility will copy basically same materials and format of the architecture. In this,
Porter, if we could mark those, so we'll make
Could
the
you
top
mark-
one
I don't have-
A3, and bottom one to be A.
yeah, this is the first one, right?
The first one will be A3, and the second one will be A4.
Yeah, we'll get to the materials in a moment. That'll be
So that'd be A3 be a street view rendering?
Yeah. This in the middle, the existing on the left and the new on. Okay. And you see the overall picture here on the left. Again, the sort of cross-shaped existing building in the upper part,
Yeah,
and then the longer linear part here.
He's.
This is a linear new part.
You need the walking mic.
Well, I just, again, the existing.
It's not on. Okay. Ali, help him out.
No, that's fine. I'm saying. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay. It's upside down. Well, we've discussed 164 units and we're proposing the 65 new, but another important thing to mention is 20%, and 20% of those are affordable units. In other words, there'll be 13 of the new 56. There'll be 56 regular and 13 of affordable units. Here you can see, and this is broken down here in this chart right here.
You need the mic. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, the little one.
So Brent, just pause. Can you just grab the mic?
Well, okay.
The little one.
Okay. Of the 20% that are affordable units as compared to the other, which are regular units, equal percentages are broken down between studio, one apartment, and two bedroom apartments, so that in this chart it shows that all of the affordable units of 20%, there's an equal percentage of each of those studios. In fact, the studios in the regular part are 26%, and in the affordable are 23% on the ground floor, the first floor. Then as you move up, and this has been discussed, but as we move up, the parking that you see in the images, on the first level, the parking is at the lower level, and then we have this half of wing on the other side, okay? And let's just take you through the next floor, the second and third. Here you can see the second and third. The access to the existing building is here. It is possible for the people to come back and forth, but basically you can see the extent of the studio apartment, the one-bedroom apartments, and the two-bedroom. And again, as I said, the affordable ones are intermixed at the proper percentages among them. The new cafeteria is here. There's a lounge area, and all of this facility is the elevators and the stairs are serving for not only the regular non-disabled, but the disabled throughout the 3 floors. Let's go to the next one. Here you can see the overall quality of the architectural materials and elevations. We basically have, besides the cultural stone veneer that's being repeated, we have cedar shake like hardy board, and we have 1-inch Portland cement. And all of that is being replicated, basically. The roof of the building will be the same, and as it was mentioned, 44 feet in height. And we can just, here you can see the parking on the first level and then the apartments on the 2 levels above. Now, let's let you see some of these, what are, in effect, type A accessible apartments. In other words, they're much more open. You'll see in the studio apartments, when you come in the door, you look through the entire length of the apartment. You can completely see the space. And here again, in this one, basically there are kitchenettes in each. There's a bathroom, and there's a washer dryer. And here on the larger apartments, even though when you come in the door, here you can see the full extent when you walk in the door of the apartment, even though the bedroom is off to the side. And then on the 2 bedrooms, it's a little bit more indirect. You come in the door and you turn, and then you have the whole open space of the living room, dining, and the bedroom here and the bedroom there. So we're very happy to present this to you. And I think that that's basically the things I wanted to point out. Thank you very much.
Mr. Resmo, who's gone? Mika?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. To clarify, Mr. Porter, the affordable housing unit distribution will follow the UHAC requirement?
Yes, and it's, again, 20% of the units.
Thank you. The other question, I see you're proposing, is that solar panels that you would be proposing on the addition?
Well, we're showing it right
Okay.
now. We're not officially proposing tonight, but
Okay.
we plan to.
All right,
And
so-
there's so many changes occurring in solar panels these days that we really will want to try to do the latest technology when the time comes.
Okay, so there is a possibility that you might.
Absolutely, yes.
How would the mechanical systems of the building, where would it be handled, the HVAC and everything?
Well, it's
would
on
that
the
be
ground level.
ground mounted?
Yeah, can
Okay.
we go back to the ground level?
And again, this can be a site plan, but we just want to make sure.
It's right here. This is the mechanical area.
Okay.
And this, then it serves the building.
Okay, so it'll all be indoors?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you. Going back to the solar panel, are any other green building materials that are being proposed with this?
Well, we have really kind of a whole list here. Let me-
Okay, as long as.
For the record, please, please, you did all the work for the outline. Please share it.
Okay, first of all, we'll conduct an exhaustive energy study. All interior common space within the development will be designated as non-smoking. The building location has been carefully worked out in terms of green considerations. The parking facilities will have, that's been discussed briefly. In terms of materials, the development provides the tenants with multiple areas of garbage storage and collection. Building B, the new, has 1 vertical trash chute, which terminates at the ground floor at the compactor room. The sustainable aspects is that the exterior open space is accessible for all the tenants. Recreation areas, as has been discussed, are to incorporate features that will be, in effect, green spaces. The rain, storm, water management, and site lighting scheme will reduce light pollution. And finally, the developer will incorporate salvage and recycled materials into the design.
And the
could
existing
we-
building does have solar panels, if I recall.
Okay. We're going to take a 10-minute break. I'm sorry, we have to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
So we stay with you, right?
This is the warning. And we're back.
Believe that.
Sorry for the interruption. Okay, you,
So, Madam Chair, that was my direct with Mr. Brent Porter. If there's any questions from the board, he's still available. If not, I'll move on to my last witness this evening.
I think we'll move on.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Is it working? Yeah, you just, it's fine. Here, just use this. Mark Remsa, if you could be sworn in. I know you testified earlier this
I
evening.
say, Mr. Remser, you remain under oath. You were sworn in earlier in this hearing tonight, so we don't need to swear you in again. And your credentials, I'm sure, have not been detrimentally affected in the last 45 minutes. Correct? You're doing okay?
That is correct.
All right, that's great. So, Madam Chairwoman, we can accept him as a expert in the area.
Expert planner.
Perfect.
Mark in the narrative, if you could take us through the planning justifications, special reasons, no negative, and reconciliation with the master plan.
Yes. So we've heard a lot about the proposal tonight. Let me just set the stage of the adjacent land uses, because that's important too. And I'll go through that quickly. So to the north of the property are some residents of the ponds at Clearbrook and also the clubhouse facility. To the east is vacant lands, mostly wooded. To the south is the retention basin and more woodlands before you come to Union Valley Road. And then to the west, there are some offices that I think Sharif talked about. That's kind of like the commercial area that's been developed. And then there's also parts of the clubhouse facility for Clearbrook. So, and we've heard about the proposal tonight. That is to add 65 age-restricted apartment units, the transitional housing units for the seniors, to achieve a total of 164 units. And there will be 13 of those 65 will be affordable units. And as Ms. Apte said, they will comply with the UHAC regulations of the type of bedroom distribution for seniors. And oh, by the way, if there is insufficient parking, it will be a parking variance, and if there's insufficient parking size, there will be a variance for that as well, and that will come at site plan. Now, let me talk just briefly about the building height. There was a lot of discussion about it. And so let me just add some clarity to the building height as to why we don't need a height variance for that. And the facility was built and approved prior to the adoption of that current ordinance. And 94% of the units that are part of the overall general development plan, that was the entire Clearbrook development, 94% of those were 2 stories or 35 feet or lower. So remember, the rules said if it was 80% had to be the 2 stories or lower and 35 feet. So essentially 94% are of that size, and that leaves only 6% that could be taller up to the 55 feet. And as we said tonight, we're proposing 44 feet. So that's why a variance would not be required for the building height.
Mr. Ramsar, sorry, if I can just, because we are talking about that, are we looking at the current ordinance or the 1979 ordinance?
I was looking at the current ordinance, right? I was looking, I pulled out your current ordinance.
Yeah. It says the same.
It says the same language from back then.
From the 1979, but I believe entire testimony was the 1979 ordinance is what's being applied.
And I'm the planner. I'm testifying now to clarify, because I'm working off the current ordinance. A lot of guidance was provided from the 79 ordinance, and that is very helpful. But what I'm saying is, if I bring us up to current date and I look at your current ordinance, and if I read it correctly, it's written similarly to back in 79, and now we're applying that, and we still fall under the 20% that can be 55 feet or higher. So that's why we don't need a height variance.
Okay, thank you.
So, and I also want to give you also a little bit of planning framework, and I'll speak very quickly about this, but why would we expand the senior citizen apartment complex? Well, I asked that question myself. And so I went and did some really quick homework, and I looked at some of the census material, as also the New Jersey Department of Labor's population projections, and they provide some very good insight. So, the projections are a little bit dated, but from 2016, there's 8.9 million people in New Jersey. They're projecting 9.7 million in 2034. Then they're looking at what's being projected for a person 65 years and older. Well, they're projecting from the 2020 census, 16.6% of people in New Jersey are 65 years and older. By 2034, 20% are going to be 65 years and older. And it's even more interesting for looking at how Middlesex County is supposed to grow, and then looking at the uniqueness of Monroe Township. In 2014, there were 836,000 folks in Middlesex County. By 2034, they're projected to have 965,000 people, just under 1 million folks. Middlesex County itself is supposed right now has 15.5% are 65 years and older. In the last census, 37.6% of the population in Monroe is 65 years and older. So you can see these projections of growth in the state, projections of growth in the county, the percentage of folks aging in New Jersey, and Monroe having a much higher percentage of people who are going to be 65 years and older. And different housing types, as we age, we have different needs for different types of housing. And some of them are not going to want to live in single-family homes. They want to live in less maintenance type and more convenience, and they want to live in the senior transitional housing, the apartments. So this is why I wanted to get the answer myself as to why we would need this. And so there's definitely a need in my mind for this kind of housing in Monroe. So let's look at the positive and negative criteria now. And so starting off, we have to have the special reasons. The special reasons have to promote the intent and purpose of the municipal land use law, NJSA 40:55D-2, and I will go through the letters and the different purposes of zoning that this particular application will promote. G, to promote sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of uses, residential. And in this case, we're providing a unique type of residential use for older senior citizens. And as we heard earlier, most of the folks that live here are 70 years and older. So this provides a unique type of housing. H, to encourage the location and design of transportation routes which promote free flow of traffic. We heard from Mr. Klein that this generates very little traffic. And that is true. We heard anecdotally that 55% of the folks have cars on the property, and that'll be fleshed out more when we come to site plan. But the bottom line is the analysis tells us there's very little traffic generation from the property, and particularly during the peak hours. To promote a desirable visual environment. Well, we saw from the architecture that it's going to match the existing architecture. We also heard that it's going to be the same height, so there won't be some odd levels of building. The other thing too, which I think we need to stress, is that the building is essentially going to be, the addition is going to be built on top of an existing parking lot. So we're not really disturbing more green space, landscape space to put this a building addition on. We are putting some additional parking in the back, which will consume some green space, but we heard that that's nominal, very small, and we heard from Mr. Ali about how little the impervious cover is being changed. Also, J, to prevent urban sprawl and the degradation of the environment through the improper use of land. So how does that do that? Well, we're expanding an existing building that's already served by utilities on top of an existing parking lot. And so we're not going in and disturbing a green field or a farm field or anything like that. We're already building on top of an area that's already been developed. M, to encourage the more efficient use of land, which my previous explanation is an extension of this purpose as well. We're developing a site, again, that's already been disturbed and developed with parking lot area. And this is the classic example of efficient use of land. So taken together, A, to promote the public health and safety, morals, and general welfare, all those previous purposes that I described can then be summarized in A. The next part of the positive criteria is site suitability. Well, this site's particularly suited for the expansion of the age-restricted apartments because it's already developed with age-restricted apartments. Number two, it's already built upon with existing parking and on which the new units will be built. And three is that it's actually part of a larger overall general development plan of a larger PRC development. And that was developed and designed many, many years ago. And so this is really an extension of an already existing neighborhood centralized in Monroe Township that's already surrounded with senior housing of a different type, and then this one complements that. Negative criteria. So first we have to look at the detriment to the public good. How does this affect the surrounding properties? Well, to the north, we have the residence and the clubhouse at the ponds at Clearbrook. Well, the expansion is actually happening on the opposite side of the building. And so there'll be no negative impact at all to the residents to the north because everything's happening to the south, separated by an existing building. To the east, no impact there at all because that's existing woodlands and vacant property. To the south, same thing. It's a municipal retention basin and woodlands to the south, so there's no negative impact. And then to the west, we have what Sharif called the commercial area, I call it the offices, and then we have a little piece of the clubhouse. So I don't see any negative impact coming from the addition of the building on the surrounding properties. Also, what's the impact to the traffic? We've heard from Mr. Klein, minimal if that. It's very, very low traffic generator. So then we have to reconcile with the master plan. So the 2022 master plan does have some land use element goals and objectives. And one that I found very interesting that this application applies to is achieve a balance of land uses that maintains and enhances the quality of life of the township. We're building on adding to an existing facility that can certainly, the property can certainly handle it. The amount of impervious coverage is minimal. And we're going to be using the green technologies to build the building. And so this is complementary to the surrounding senior housing development. Another one in the master plan is to encourage redevelopment and infill development where it's feasible to promote more efficient use of land and existing infrastructure. Well, this hits home exactly to what I talked about. One of the purposes of advancing the purposes of the municipal land use law. And again, this can be considered sort of like an infill development where more units were approved years ago. They never were built. And now we're building on top of an existing parking lot. And the property's already served with utilities. So this is, and there's no new real infrastructure that has to be extended to the property. So this fits that goal of the master plan beautifully. Another one is to ensure Monroe has in place sufficient strategies to minimize natural hazard risks and climate change vulnerability. Well, this property is outside of any floodplains or any environmental hazards. And so adding a building on top of the existing parking lot also advances this goal of the master plan. And then in the 2022 master plan, it talks about circulation element goals and objectives, and that's to ensure a safe and efficient transportation system for Monroe residents and employers. Again, very low traffic generator, no need to change any of the existing infrastructure, and this would have really no negative. And then finally, in the master plan, it talked about utility element goals and objectives, and that's to achieve coordination between the extension of utilities with the growth policies of the land use plan. Well, the land use plan says you've got to be very careful and you want to balance it out. Another one says be careful about the efficient use of land and existing infrastructure. And in this case, this addition will utilize existing utilities that are already in place. So I believe this also reconciles with the township's master plan. So to conclude, I find that the use variance meets all the proofs for this use variance and that it can be approved.
I have nothing further on direct for Mr. Remse. I open up to the board professionals for questioning.
Thank you. Mr. Razumowitz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First question, is there any density variance that's being triggered by these additional units?
No.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
The age restriction, with this age restriction, does that mean that every resident in the building will be 55 or over?
Correct.
Thank you. The residents of the apartments, how long is a typical stay?
That I can't answer. I would have to defer to the operations.
About 2 years.
Okay, and is there any short-term rentals that are provided if somebody wanted to come in for a week?
No, there's not.
So how is that restricted?
I think, if I recall, your ordinances prevent week-to-week, like Airbnb type usage.
Correct. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, and obviously, I think a couple years back, we got a note that it was Airbnb, and we resolved it. Immediately put up notice, restricted against that use, and there was no issue with the zoning officer after that point.
So the Airbnb, because like you said, a couple of years ago, there were some issues with Airbnbs being run out of there.
Correct.
That's all been resolved.
It's all been resolved.
Restricted. And
correct, and we haven't had issues since that. And I'm trying to think. It was before the pandemic, so probably 3+ years at this point.
Thank you. Tonight's application is only for the use variance, and we'll have the discussion as far as parking. There's no variances you're not looking for any variance or design waiver relief on any parking counts, parking spaces here tonight.
We're going to reserve that for the site plan.
Thank you.
And we are going to take some of the guidance that you suggested.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I don't have any other items. I believe if they didn't put it on the record, my March 16, 2023 review letter, if they agree to meet the comments in that letter.
I think we were able to satisfy it all. Yeah.
I believe he agreed to.
Yeah, I agreed them all. Yeah, I believe that's what he said on the record. Yeah.
No, I have nothing further.
Thank you. Mika, our planner.
Mr. Ramsar, just for the record, if you can clarify, so the type of use that is being proposed is age-restricted senior transitional facility. Is that correct?
Yes.
And not assisted living. Could you, for the board, just clarify the difference between the two type of facility?
Sure. Well, assisted living often has a medical component or some kind of healthcare aspect to it. Sometimes assisted living will have a dementia aspect to it that has to have a certain kind of strict oversight. This type of facility does not have any of that. This type of facility, the residents are ambulatory. They're not guided. They're allowed to go out on their own, but it's restricted to folks 65 and older. 55 and older, excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramza.
You're welcome.
And the second question, the entire 164 units would be senior transitional facility.
You are
right?
you are correct, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any questions?
Just one.
Yes.
If I may. The minimum rental period of time is what?
It's 1 year lease agreements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Within your CCNRs, what do you have specifically in section 704, I believe it is, that would stipulate that you would not have someone leasing or in the outside corporations buying up units in your facility?
Certainly the ownership is just under my current client. I'm not sure how to answer. Trying to think. We're not selling any. They're apartment rentals.
Units aren't for sale.
Yeah, they're only for rentals.
And the use variance is for rental apartments.
Yeah.
And that we have to go by the use variance approval if you so do.
So yeah, they're not for sale. These apartments.
These
They're
are not
only-
for sale.
They're only for yearly rentals. Does that answer the question?
No.
Yeah.
Well, a
yeah.
resolution of approval for this type of use, that is what your zoning officer has in hand to enforce that. So it would be for the age-restricted rental apartments.
Okay.
And we don't sublet or anything like that. There's no
Is
Airbnb.
there no subletting provision?
You're right.
I don't have the lease.
No.
Yeah, there's no subletting. That
subletting.
can be a condition of any approval.
Okay.
No Airbnb. I mean, I'm trying to think of what else. I don't remember what section that was in the ordinance, but
Jeffrey, actually, you can get in the use variance, no Airbnb restrictions. Those are the kinds of things you can put in the resolution.
I'm okay with that restriction. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No Airbnb.
So we can put that as a condition of any approval. Yes, that's fine.
So no short-term rentals and no subletting.
Yep, correct, exactly.
And the other thing is, like, you say 45% of your residents do not have cars. It's like, and you're concentrating on the master plan. So, how are they able to access grocery stores? It's like within a short
That's a very
period.
good question. They actually have the bus system that's offered for the seniors in town, and I'm sure the operator can explain how it works. But my understanding is that those that don't have it will make an appointment to get picked up, and then they go to their doctor's appointments, their shopping and things like that.
So they utilize the Monroe Township bus service to the property 4 times a day. There's 2 pickup times and 2 drop-off times, and it takes them throughout Monroe. And it follows the township bus service schedule route plan. There's medical offices, grocery stores, other amenities that you can reach through that bus system.
Right. Yeah. But is there any future plans to have something come in that's so they could just walk to one of these stores or something like that?
Unfortunately, no. I mean, where the site is located, it's surrounded by residential, single-family, age-restricted homes with office and clubhouse. So there's no walking. But the only amenities that we can provide that we thought of were, additional like outdoor recreation, seating areas,
Vegetable garden,
things of that nature. But the current residents have utilized the bus system if they don't have a car to no complaints, and we expect the same with any additional units and additional members joining.
And the residents also get grocery delivery? At the
You can
site?
do, grocery delivery, Uber. There's no
Eats.
reason they can't
Yeah.
utilize any of the service that everyone else has at their fingertips.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the board? Yes.
Okay.
Jackie?
Regarding parking, I believe you said additional parking would be constructed in the rear of the building on what is currently there now, where you propose to build more parking.
I'm going to change that over to the site engineer because that's his job.
Okay.
If there are no other questions, I'll be over
I
here
don't
if you
think
need
so.
me.
Okay. Also, I have one other regarding parking. Are residents restricted to only one vehicle? Say if a husband and wife both have a car,
I don't believe we have any restriction, but the aggregate right now is 55% of all of the units.
So that would include tenants that have two vehicles?
Two vehicles, yeah. But I think the vast majority are, they only have one car. I think, yeah, but it's not restricted to one car, but you only see, from practice, it's only been, the individual units are only, they usually only use one car, just due to circumstances.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So you want to show the parking, if Mr. Ali will answer your question.
Yes, so the existing parking, that's what you see as you're coming in on the right-hand side as you exit the site, and also on the left-hand side. That is the existing parking. And then as you proceed more north or northeast, the parking stop just about with the limit of the building right here. So the additional parking is this area right here. And also to answer the question, if we need to add any additional green spaces, yes, we do have plenty of rooms. We have this area here for green spaces. We have this area here. This is all part of the site. So we have plenty of rooms on site for parking.
Thank you.
And certainly we'll flesh that out. Obviously if we get an approval this evening, site plan will discuss all that in great detail.
Yes.
Yes.
Curiosity question. There's a limit or a minimum 55-year-old, right?
Yes.
What if I have children? Is that allowed?
We're not, it's prohibited from this unit, unfortunately, so, yeah.
Mr. Masters, I think our ordinance itself in this zone, it says that, the minimum age, there can be no adult less than 48 years of age in this, as per the age-restricted definition in our ordinance.
Because if I recall, what's the over 55 with the water fountain, a waterfall, they put the soap in it all the time? Because I remember we had to route school buses in there because even though it was over 55, there was a lot of residents with children. But, okay, as long as we have an ordinance, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I believe
We'll
that's
adhere to that ordinance, but
that's the definition.
I think it's federal mandated, correct?
It's federal mandate, but in our Monroe ordinance also, it says the same thing.
Codified, okay.
All right.
Okay. That's it? No other board? At this time, I'm going to open it up to, I'm sorry, are you?
Yeah, that's our direct.
Okay, I'm jumping ahead.
Madam Chair, no, go ahead.
At this point, I will open it up to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to be heard on this application, come forward, state your name, spell your last, and your address. Seeing none, I look for a motion to close.
Close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? No. Okay, board members.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a proposal to approve under the stipulation that our professionals' concerns are addressed for final site plan.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Lupo?
Yes.
Mr. Masters? Mr. Jaffe?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Dr. Kenzie?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Damiani?
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you, and look forward to coming back for the site plan. Thank you.
Move along.
Not to mention-
there are,
Jeff, you wanna vote tonight?
Their housing act, so they're allowed to have kids in there
Exactly.
that are dependent, like so.
I'll drag it on to them, somebody may come up with something.
With their
Okay.
family and also
Okay, we have to, we have more homework here.
then anybody can own the house, they just can't live there.
Board members, we're going to proceed on the meeting.
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now we have a memorialization of BA-5214-21, Esposito Construction, LLC. Do we have a motion to approve?
Second.
Roll call? Roll call?
Mr. Lupo?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Jaffe?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Dr. Kenzie?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Damiani?
Yes. Our next one is BA-5223-22, Patrick Mahone. Do we have an approval? Anybody wants?
Make a motion to approve.
Roll call?
Mr. Lupo? Yes. Mr. Masters?
So if I abstained on that vote,
You abstain.
can I?
Just abstain on this
Abstain.
one.
Mr. Jaffe?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
I'm not sure what the, can you clarify what this is?
Here it
I
is.
remember sitting in on that.
Bulk variances to construct a single-family dwelling on property at 102 North Bergen Mills Road.
Okay, yes.
Dr. Kenzie?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Damiani?
Yes. Okay, discussion items. We have to review an adoption of a resolution for any or all additional litigation monies and all non-escrow related matters. We have a
Just for the record, this is, you engage me to be your board attorney. You also, if you experience litigation, typically engage me to do that, and that is a separate line item and a separate resolution of approval. We do have some limited litigation that exists that we're still cleaning up, so this would just allow me to do that on your behalf.
Do I have a motion to approve? Second? Roll call? Or- Yeah.
Mr. Lupo?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Jaffe?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Dr. Kenzie?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Damiani?
Yes. Okay, public portion. Anyone in the public wishing to be heard?
That's you.
Seeing none, I didn't open it, right? I looking for a motion to close the public portion. Anybody? Same
Motion
guys.
to close.
Same guys. All in favor?
Aye. Yes.
No correspondence. Look for adjournment, motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next meeting is April 25th.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.